Tori DeSimone. I'm your host, Tori DeSimone. I hope you guys are having an amazing Monday so far. And if you guys are watching this on YouTube, then you will see I'm in the midst of creating kind of like a new little office, a new little setup. Let me know if you guys like this for the podcast background. I'm still tweaking things. I still plan on adding a bunch of things, but so far this is kind of just what I'm thinking. But anyway, I hope you guys are having a really great Monday so far. Today, I'm really excited to share my entrepreneurial story with you guys. I have not shared this story in its entirety for a few reasons. Number one, I assumed that everyone just sort of knew my story, which is super ignorant of me to assume that, because my entrepreneurial story has honestly been unfolding before all of our eyes. It's been a very public journey, a very public process, meaning I've been documenting the whole part of it. It started when I was 14 on YouTube and has continued now 12 years later, being 26, owning brick and mortar studios. So when did I start? 12, 14, whatever, something like that, 14 years ago. Oh my God, was it really that long ago? Is that mathing? I think so. So it's been unfolding before all of our very eyes. So to me, it feels like something we have all seen unfold before us. So with that comes me feeling the need to not have to explain it, which is super ignorant of me to assume that everyone that has ever listened to a piece of my content knows all of my backstory. That's just not how social media works. It's not the case, but it's my life and it's my podcast. So in like a weird way, I just feel like everyone knows, even though I should not assume that, because that is not the case, but that is an honest answer. The second reason that I've never filmed this is because I'm still very much so in the midst of my entrepreneurial journey. And I kept feeling like I had to push this story, video, episode, whatever it is, off until I got to a certain point of success in my career. And I don't even know what that success point is. I don't know if it's I'm waiting to like hit a certain amount of salary that I make a year, or a sale of a business, or like I truly don't know what it is that I'm waiting for, where I think like, oh, this one thing is going to make me more of an entrepreneur than I am now. And I've just come to realize that that's never going to happen. And like, I'm as much of an entrepreneur and CEO as the next person. Like, if you work for yourself and you make money from your own businesses and you create your own businesses, you're an entrepreneur. And I don't know why I like put this thing on it, or this time cap on it, where it's like when I hit X, then I can tell a story. I don't even know what I'm waiting for. But I'm just very much so in the middle of it. And I've learned that I'm always going to be in the midst of my journey. I don't think it's ever going to end, nor do I ever want it to end. Even if chapters along my entrepreneurial journey have come to a close, and you'll hear some of those in my story, that doesn't mean like me being an entrepreneur is done, right? It just means I'm on to the next venture, or on to the next journey, or whatever that looks like. So that's something that I've learned and accepted, and I'm happy with. You know, I'm happy that it's never going to be over, and I'm happy that I'm always going to learn more things. Like, I'm never going to know everything. And if I ever do tell you guys that I know everything, that's when we've officially lost the plot, because I will never know everything. But I can talk on my own experience, when I've learned from my experiences. So there's that. But also the third reason why I've never told my story is because I've always assumed in my mind that entrepreneurs were different, for whatever reason, than a CEO. And I've always had kind of a really hard time identifying myself as a CEO, even though I am. Like, I'm CEO of my businesses, my brick and mortar businesses, of this podcast, of my YouTube channel, like chief executive officer, right? Like, that's always been, that's me. Like, I've been in charge. Like, I make the decisions. I make the final say, like what I say goes, I sign the paychecks, things like that. Whether it's to my staff or just to myself, negotiating deals with my podcast network or YouTube managers back in the day, like I've always been the one that makes those decisions. And that's one of the duties of a CEO. And I think that I've always had trouble identifying as a CEO because in my mind, I picture CEO as a very head honcho man in a suit negotiating business deals. And I don't know, it's just a very masculine role. And that's obviously not me. And then on the flip side of that, in the more feminine era of it, it's portrayed online and on social media as these very polished, put together women who I definitely admire and respect, but they're always wearing, blazers and like I think of Mel Robbins with like thick rimmed black glasses, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's never been me to the point where I see that and I'm like, oh yeah, like I feel really aligned with that version of what a female CEO looks like, even though it's crazy to say female CEO because CEO can be male, female, whatever, you know what I mean? When in actuality, like how I am right now on video is my version of being a CEO and being an entrepreneur. And actually this summer is the first time that I've really kind of pulled back that curtain and started looking at this as legit and being like, you know what? Like I have a lot of experience and my story does count as an entrepreneurial journey, even if it's still happening and still unfolding. And still learning and still processing. And yeah, I wear sweatshirts like every single day. And I wear athletic clothes every single day. And I had a Zoom meeting today and I wore a t-shirt in my Zoom meeting. And I don't always do my hair and I don't always wear makeup. But that doesn't make me any less of a CEO or any less of an entrepreneur. So I've had to really kind of look in the mirror and accept that like I can be one version of myself, which is this version where it's super, authentic to me and relaxed and laid back. But I could also, dress the part and wear the jumpsuit, the blazer, the collared shirts, and pretend to be like this, I don't want to say girl boss, but it's the only word really coming to mind. I could pretend to be that version of me, but who this is the most authentic version. And accepting that and knowing that this CEO and this entrepreneur has just as much to say as the one that's in the blazers. And not that there's anything wrong with wearing blazers. That just wouldn't be super authentic to me because this is me. And that's been really liberating to feel. It's almost like I'm redefining what a CEO is to me. And it's been freeing and very liberating. And I think that's a whole podcast topic in and of itself that I would love to implement, but that's not the point of today's episode. So those are 3 reasons why I haven't shared in the past, but I do want to share today my entrepreneurial journey to present day and from where it began and how it got to where I am. Because I think if you look at my life, it's divided into 3 pillars. 2 of them seem connected. One of them seems like the oddball, but when I explain my journey, they all are connected to one another. And I think that's pretty cool. So I wanted to share that today. And I guess let's just jump right into it. Like, what else is there to say, right? And if you guys enjoy this episode, definitely let me know. And if you want this to be a series where I bring on other entrepreneurs and we listen to their stories and how they got their start, I would absolutely love to do that. I think it would be a really, really cool podcast and a really great show. I know there are a few very similar to that. I mean, tons that are very similar to that, but I personally would love to talk to small business owners in particular and how they got their start. And hopefully by the end of this episode, if nothing else, this encourages you to know that anyone can work for themselves and become an entrepreneur if it's really what you want to do. I personally love it. I have my best days and my worst days all in the same day, from being an entrepreneur, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I love it. It's so incredible. It's so rewarding. You learn so much. I get to be creative. I get to meet really cool people. I get to learn so much from my staff, from my failures, from my successes, and I get to really learn about myself, which is super, super cool. And I really love it. So let's dive into the very beginning of how I grew up, and we'll go from there. So my dad is an entrepreneur, and he's been his whole life. He has always owned his own businesses, and that's all I've ever known. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she now works for both my dad and me. She does our payroll she's very involved in all of my businesses. And she's always been like my biggest cheerleader. But my mom has always worked for my dad growing up, or she was a full-time stay-at-home mom, which was the biggest blessing. Now that I'm older, I can look back on that and be like, that was really special. And like truly the biggest blessing in the world was to have a stay-at-home mom. But my dad, he was an entrepreneur. So he always owned his own business. My dad's a business psychologist. And I still don't know like exactly what my dad does. Like, does anyone really know what their parents actually do? But from what I can tell, my dad is a talent developer, is maybe the best way of putting it. He will go into businesses and evaluate their staff, or help develop their staff talent into leaders. He'll do just like psychology with businesses. It's really cool. He has a really great software that he and his business partner built. It's really great. Anyway, so that's what my dad's always done growing up. He's a business psychologist. And people always ask me, now that my dad is a little bit older, like, when's your dad going to retire? And I always say, I don't think he's ever going to retire, because he loves what he does. Genuinely. Like, even I've never seen a day where my dad doesn't work. And it's not like he's around the clock working. Like, my dad lives the life. Like, he has so many hobbies. If you guys listen to my podcast with my mom, Let Me Call My Mom, we talk about my dad's hobbies all the time. Like, he lives life. He enjoys his life. But he works a lot because he genuinely loves what he does. And every time we go on vacation, he would work a little bit on Sunday mornings. Like, he works. Like, he loves what he does. I wouldn't say he's a workaholic, but he definitely works hard. And I say all this because growing up, that's just what I've always known. Also, when I was really young and growing up, I wanted to be like a pop star. It was just like all I wanted to do. I wanted to like sing and dance. And I remember I would like put on little concerts all the time. I remember one time I told my dad, I'm going to be famous. Like, it was just this thing I always wanted to do. Well, anyway, I always had an interest, more so specifically in beauty and makeup and hair. And when I was really young, nails. I loved doing nails, and I wanted to be a nail tech when I grew up. I wanted to do nails. And I remember telling my grandpa, who is my mom's dad, he passed in 2017, but obviously long before that, he said, Tori, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, how everyone asks you when you're 5, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to do nails. And my grandpa said, Tori, I think that's fantastic, but you should own the nail salon instead of just doing nails. And I didn't really know what that meant. And I was like, okay, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I say that to point out that it was just always sort of ingrained in me that if you want to work, like, you should work for yourself. It's kind of just how my family is and was. You know, some families are doctors and some families are lawyers, and I feel like I was just like bred to be an entrepreneur. I don't know. It was just always in my family. as I got a little bit older, I got really interested in hair. And I remember my mom, if she wasn't a stay-at-home mom, she probably would have done something in architecture. So she loved architecture, and she had this one software where you could build houses and really anything. It was an architecture software. And she's brilliant at it. Brilliant. I've never said that before. I'm like British. She was, though. She is. She's very, very brilliant with architecture and structure and the flow of things. She redesigned our kitchen, or their kitchen, the basement. She's designed for friends and stuff like that. So she just always had an eye for it. But anyway, when I got a little bit older, I was really interested in hair. This was like maybe 9 or 10. And I wanted to be a hairdresser. And again, my mom, who is, remember, the daughter of my grandpa, said, well, why don't you open a hair salon when you get older? That could be really fun. And I was like, you know what, it would be. And we sat down and we made a whole floor plan of what my hair salon would look like. So again, just kind of building that you don't work for, you own. And that's just how it is. So just keep that all in the back of your mind. Now, growing up a little bit older, about 11 or 12, I got really, really interested in makeup. So I've always been very into beauty, as you can tell, nails, hair, makeup. It was just the natural progression. So I got really, really interested in makeup. This came about in a good time in my life because I was phasing out of playing softball. Softball was, the sport that I played when I was in middle school and in the very early stages of high school. I think I stopped in 8th grade, actually, so not high school, but I was really into softball. Growing up, it was super fun for me, and I just sort of got out of it. I phased out of it. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I used to. So I stopped playing softball, and I also got hit with like this weird wave of teenage emotions. And I was always a really, really happy kid. But for the first time in my life in 7th grade, I started to experience depression. And it was just weird because it just came out of nowhere and it hit me really hard. I think I learned what, just what like depression was, and I learned what suicide was, because of, a boy in my school committed. It was horrible, and I learned what it was that year, and it was just horrible. And it was the first time in my life where I was sad, and I couldn't shake it. And I was never diagnosed with depression, but there was like a solid year and a half where I was just really sad all the time and just really kind of struggling. And that was when softball was phasing out, and I was really interested in makeup, and my way of kind of just like escaping my thoughts were on YouTube. And this was 2011. So YouTube at the time was I was in 7th grade. And YouTube at the time was really weird. Like, it was very much so a place where no one went on. It was just for cat videos and like the Steven Gets Angry videos. If you guys are like OG and you remember that, like those were the kinds of videos on YouTube. It was just old YouTube culture, like nothing like what YouTube is now. And it was a place where you made music videos with your friends. Like that's what it was. So I remember I was so randomly on YouTube one day. I never went on YouTube, but I went on one day and I saw a Katy Perry makeup tutorial. And I don't remember who it was by, but I saw a Katy Perry makeup tutorial and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I watched it and I loved it. And then I saw a video from All That Glitters 21, Elle Fowler, Queen. I think she's remarried now with like a different last name and kids, which is so crazy. But it was a video of hers, and she was holding up like a Coastal Scents 88 eyeshadow shimmer palette. And she was doing a makeup tutorial with it. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I found her sister Blair, and I was obsessed with Blair. Now, I do have an older sister. Her name is Maddie. I'm 26. She's 27, but she's about to be 28. We're 18 months apart. And so I say all this because I do have an older sister. We're close-ish. Like I say that because one, she lives on the other side of the country, but two, her and I are very different. But the older we get, the closer we get, which has been really cool. But Blair felt very much so like an older sister because she was about the same age difference of me and my sister, but she was very girly. My sister was not girly whatsoever. She was a total tomboy, and she wore her hair in like a ponytail every day. She wore long Shaq shorts, like basketball shorts, but they were the brand Shaq. And she would wear like basketball shoes every day. Like she was just such a tomboy. And when she wasn't like full tomboy mode, she was an equestrian rider, and she would always ride horses. And I wasn't a big animal lover growing up. So we were just very different growing up. I was really into beauty. She couldn't get farther away from it. So we were just very different. So when I found Blair, it just sort of felt like an older sister thing. And I became obsessed with Blair's videos. And I just loved them. And I watched and watched and watched and watched. And I just felt like really at home and really at peace. And it was just so awesome. So I watched her videos for a while, and then I started to build my own little makeup collection and started to do my own makeup just for fun, like after school and things like that. I wasn't really allowed to wear makeup in 7th grade. I was allowed to wear clear mascara. But once I start, and like lip gloss and blush maybe, but I wasn't allowed to wear like dark eye makeup or foundation or anything like that to school. I could wear it, for fun around the house, but I wasn't allowed to wear it out of the house or at school. But the more I started watching these videos, the more I got into makeup. And I started, it was so funny. Like I just remember being really young, like in 7th grade. This was like before the 7th graders looked like 20-year-olds. When we all had our awkward phase, I would wear makeup and eyeshadow, and then I would go downstairs to have breakfast like before I went to school, and I would look at my mom like just with my head would be all the way down and my eyes would be all the way up so that she couldn't see the eyeshadow. Of course, my mom saw my eyeshadow and she saw my makeup. She never said anything though. She never told me to like wash it off or take it off or anything. She was always really cool about it. But all to say is that I got really, really into makeup. So around 7th grade summer going into 8th grade, I really wanted to start my own YouTube channel. But I really wanted to have my story just like Blair's, where she started out on her MacBook and then she ended up getting a camera, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So I asked my mom if I could start a YouTube channel of makeup tutorials, and my mom was like, okay, but I have to see every video that goes up before you post it, and you can't say your name. And I was like, okay, I can do that. So I recorded on, it wasn't Zoom, but it was like Zoom, because I didn't have a MacBook at the time. I had an HP laptop that I got for Christmas, maybe like in 6th or 7th grade. And this was in the beginning, this was in like the fall of 8th grade, like November, December of 8th grade. Oh, and I made my YouTube channel, and my username was Makeup101, and I made it. I thought of it on the way home from Philly. I was driving home from Philly for whatever reason, like with my family, and I was obsessed with MAC makeup. Like, you guys, MAC makeup back in the day was the shit. Like, it was the only makeup that you would wear. So I was obsessed with MAC makeup. So I wanted to put an emphasis on MAC, and I was doing makeup, and I was teaching people 101. I thought it was such a clever username, Makeup101. Like, honestly, it still is. Like, I still think it's a really good username. And usernames were the thing back then. So I made that username, Makeup101, and I asked my mom if I could make a channel. She said yes. And I used like Zoom to record it, but it wasn't Zoom. It was like 2011's version of Zoom. So I made my first ever makeup tutorial. It was a red lip makeup tutorial. And I used a little lip stain from Ulta. I don't know if I used a lip liner or not. And I edited it on iMovie maybe. No, couldn't have been iMovie. I don't know how I edited it, but I did somehow. And I showed my mom and she was like, it's super cute. And then I put it up and I put it up on YouTube. It was literally my mom and I watching. And then I got my first ever subscriber. Her name was Hannah. I'll never forget. And I was so excited, but I was also so embarrassed. If anyone from my school ever found out, I would have been mortified. So I told no one for like 4 days. And then I told my friend Sibel in French class, I was like, Sibel, I started a YouTube channel. And she was like, no way. And I was like, yeah, this is it. So then the next video that I made, I think it was like a fall makeup eye tutorial. At the end of it, I was like, hey, Sibel. And I shouted her out. And that video got 2 views. One was definitely my mom. And the other hopefully was Sibel. And maybe even 3 views from my third subscriber, Hannah. Or my first subscriber, Hannah. So I started on YouTube and I can't really remember what it was that got my videos kind of rolling with traction. There are definitely a few pivotal moments in my YouTube career that I can think of, but in the very, very beginning, I just think it was fun and I was just making friends along the way. And honestly, so many memories are coming up right now that I think I need to make a whole other video about like my really old starting days of YouTube, because I'm getting a lot of memories coming up right now and I just want to talk about them all, but we don't have time. I would talk your ear off. So I was doing this these makeup videos for about 6 months until I hit, I think, 1,000 subscribers. And it was just from like networking. At the time, you could leave comments on people's YouTube channels, like on their actual channel, you could leave comments. So I would go to like Juicy Star 07 or other girls that were like my size of subscribers. And I would say, hey guys, like I'm just starting out too on YouTube. My channel's Makeup 101. Come check me out. And I would do like sub for sub and things like that. And it was just really fun. I met some really great friends who I'm still friends with to this day, one of which is named Maddie Glam. Her and I got super close. We visited each other. It was just super cool. So as I got a little bit older, started getting a little bit more followers, my mom said I could say my first name on the internet, which was really exciting. So then I started saying, I'm Tori, da da da. And then also we had a camcorder in our coat closet downstairs that I actually knew we had the whole time, but I really wanted my journey to look just like Blair's, and she started out on a webcam. So I also wanted to start out on a webcam. So after I, hit my 1,000 subscriber mark, I was like, now I can go use the camcorder. So I went downstairs, I got the camcorder out of the closet, and I started using that, and I was like, I got a camcorder, woo! And it was just like super fun for me and really, really fun memories. My mom was really supportive and really awesome of me putting videos of myself on the internet. She was really supportive of it, really, really cool, and she saw that I really liked it. So this totally helped my quote unquote depression just go away. Like, honestly, it just was lifted. Like it's like Taylor Swift's Clean. Like one day I was just clean of it. And I really think YouTube and makeup like just pulled me out of this funk that I was in when I was younger. And like I said, my mom was super supportive. There were shows called IMATS, International Makeup Artist Trade Show, where they hosted them in New York. I'm from Philly, so we would just drive right up to New York. I would go, I would attend, I would buy a lot of makeup. I would see all of like the makeup girls that I followed on YouTube. They would all be there. It was just so cool. There were shows to go see in New York, and my mom saw how serious I was about it, and she gave me an allowance to get my nails done or buy little makeup products so that I could have this upkeep on my YouTube channel. It was really cool how much they supported me. And like I said, my sister was an equestrian rider, so she would go to the barn. We had an extra guest room in our house, just like a guest room, but we never had guests over. So I asked my mom if I could turn that into my makeup studio. She said yes, which was super cool for me. So I was able to turn that into a makeup studio and like my YouTube recording room. It was really cool. And if there's anything I know, it's just that I have the best and most supportive parents ever. Like, they've never looked at me crazy for anything that I've ever wanted to do. And they've just been nothing but supportive throughout my entire entrepreneurial career. So to kind of wrap up this section of it, I started on YouTube. I started to gain some traction, and I went fast forward to my sophomore year of high school. So I was about 16, maybe 15, just about to turn 16. I went out to LA for IMATS, and I met some really awesome people there. And I had some friends from YouTube, just again, like getting to know girls my own size. And when I say size, I mean like subscriber counts, view count, like channel size, stuff like that. So I had some YouTube friends from, like even friends now like Brooke, Danielle, Kenzie, which is super, super cool to see how they've grown in their journeys. We all knew each other like from so long back in the day. It's so cool. But anyway, I met some really awesome people at this one IMAT show in, I think it was January of 2014, not 2016, 2014. And that really changed a lot of my YouTube trajectory. It was honestly luck. Like, it was right time, right place, right era, right moment. I just met some really awesome people that put me in touch with the right people, and that really helped propel my career at the time in YouTube. And that's sort of when I began to make some money on YouTube, and I started to think like this could really become something. I started traveling a little bit more from my YouTube channel. I was strictly posting just like makeup tutorials and stuff like that, and I was having a lot of fun doing it. But I started to make some money, and I started to think, oh, maybe I don't need to go to college. And I also want to say I never really thought I would go to college because I was always in the beauty mindset. So my idea was I'll go to cosmetology school instead of college. I never wanted to be, I don't know, I just never pictured myself working a corporate job. It just never crossed my mind. It was always like cosmetology school or whatever else comes my way. And I think that always held very true. But when YouTube really started, doing its thing, I was like, okay, now I really just don't see the need right now for college anyway. So I'm a sophomore. My YouTube is really starting to pick up. I'm starting to get money. I'm starting to get brand deals. I'm signing with managers, and it's pretty cool. Like, I'm getting really cool opportunities. And fast forward to my junior year, the really cool thing to do was to drop out of school and go to online school and be a full-time YouTuber and do online school and move out to LA. So, of course, I wanted to do the same thing. I definitely, now that I'm older, I can't remember if I'm just like maybe blurring it out. There were definitely bullies when it came to my YouTube channel. Like, don't get me wrong, it was not cool. Like, I was like definitely the YouTube girl. It was definitely weird. People would screenshot my videos and draw rude things on the screenshots. Like, it was passed around the school. Like, it just wasn't very cool. But I also didn't really let that discourage me because what I thought I was doing was cool. And that was enough for me. Like, I thought going to LA was cool. I thought doing these opportunities that I was doing was cool. Like, everything that I was doing, I thought was really cool. And that was enough for me. So I didn't need the validation from kids I went to school with. I had a good group of friends, and there were definitely days where I thought I was like too cool for school. Like, I won't lie, but there were a lot more days where I was just like, I just do this thing on the side. I really enjoy it. It's like my hobby. I don't do a sport. I do YouTube instead. And it's really fun for me. That's that. So, around my junior year though, I started just getting like, I don't know, the bullying kind of just went up a little bit. It wasn't crazy by any means, but it was just like, I was just getting a lot more comments than I had in the past. And I didn't like those comments because I was focused a lot on my YouTube. I wasn't as focused on school so much. like when I took SAT or ACT testing, I didn't try my hardest at all because I knew I wasn't going to go to college. I didn't want to go to college, but I still had to take the tests. And I didn't do the best on them because I didn't try. I didn't apply myself. I was a very good student up until YouTube because, and even when I like stopped trying, I was still a pretty good student, like high B, low A average. But I just did what I had to do to get by. I didn't try to excel, get a 4.0 because grades just weren't really important to me. Like what I was doing with YouTube felt really cool and really important and felt like something that I could actually do after high school. So my junior year, the comments I was getting like from classmates and stuff were just kind of getting a little bit more intense. And my YouTube was really picking up in the sense that I was traveling a lot. And I was also making like a lot of money for a kid in high school. So I asked my mom if I could switch to online school. And she said yes, which was crazy. And then I asked her if I could move out to LA. And she said yes at 17, which was crazy. And it's like, it's so cool that they've always supported me. Like no matter what, it was just really cool. So I transferred from public school to online school, which I actually can't even believe that I did that now, like thinking about it, but I did. I transferred and I learned very quickly that I did not like it. I didn't like when YouTube became something that was a job instead of a hobby, even though, yes, I was making money from it. When it was a hobby, it felt way more fun for me. Then when I moved out to LA, I realized how completely unfulfilling full-time influencing, which also at the time influencing was not even a term. Content creation wasn't even a term. The term was YouTube beauty guru. Okay. I just learned how unfulfilling it was for me. I'm not knocking on it now because I think for some people it's extremely fulfilling. But for me, what I learned at 17 was I can't just do this. I love it when it's a hobby and when it's something on the side, but it can't be all that I do. Because I found a very solid, what I'm trying to say is it was hard to structure my life. When I had no deadlines, it was hard to get videos out. When I was very much so in the lifestyle of influencing, it felt very shallow. When I was really surrounded by only other content creators, it felt very fake and forced. It just wasn't my favorite thing. So I had like two different friend groups when I was out in LA. One that was very much so party, and that was fun. Like I got that out of my system. And then I had another friend group that was like very wholesome. And I just felt so much better when I was with my wholesome friend group. And obviously they were YouTube beauty gurus as well. And I just really liked their pace of life. But what was different with them was they also had other lives, right? They were in school or they had full-time jobs or they just had other things going for them. While my other group of friends had just influencing. And for me, it just was super unfulfilling. So I remembered this and I ended up at the end of that summer. So that was the summer of my junior year going into my senior year of high school. I said to my mom, I don't want to do this full time. I want to go back into public school. I want to finish out my senior year and maybe I want to explore college. She was like, okay, we can do that. So I went back to high school and I finished out my senior year of high school. And it was so funny because I went to the same school district from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And I had to re-register in 12th grade as like a new student. It was so wild to me. My junior year prom, I had to be taken to my prom by someone from like our friend group because I couldn't go to my high school's prom because I was online schooled at the time. It was so wild. But anyway, so I went back to my senior year of high school and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to college. I'm gonna try this out. Now, mind you, I didn't try my hardest in SAT, ACTs, and like I said, my GPA wasn't anything to write home about. I was a very, very, very average student, but I had a really cool extracurricular. And I was like, well, maybe that will help me get into college. Spoiler alert, it did not. Okay. I was applying to college to go to in the fall of 2016. Maybe things are different now, 8 years later, but then they did not care if you were, a YouTube beauty guru back in the day. They did not care. So I ended up applying to a bunch of colleges, and I only heard back from 2. I don't know why I only heard back from 2 colleges, but one of the 2 that I heard back from was University of Alabama. And I was like, okay, great. That's where I'll go. So in the fall, I ended up going to the University of Alabama. But backtracking, excuse me, I'm like talking too fast. Backtracking a little bit. When I was in LA, I mentioned that I was kind of partying a little bit. I was 17. I was like independent. I was doing my thing. I was like having fun, whatever. I was partying a little bit. Well, that was the first time I've ever lived alone. So I put on maybe 10 or 15 pounds of just like extra weight. And when I came home, I just felt a little uncomfortable carrying this 10 or 15 extra pounds. So I wanted to lose the weight. In November of 2015, so my senior year of high school, my friend at the time, Hallie, her and I, we went to a SoulCycle class in New York City. And I never took a spin class before outside of like LA Fitness, YMCA, things like that. So I took a SoulCycle class and I fell in love with it. It was so much fun. I was like, this is awesome. The song was the R.L. Grimes or The Hills by The Weeknd R.L. Grime remix. That was the opening song. And I remember the chorus dropped. Everyone dropped down into a push-up, myself included. I was like, this is awesome. I was hooked. I was sold immediately. I will never, ever, ever forget it. It was the coolest thing ever. And I loved it. That was in November of 2015. So my senior year of high school. I loved it so much. And I was like, where is this at home? Like, I need this where I live, because I didn't live in New York City. My friend Hallie, who I went to SoulCycle with, a month or so later was like, I found a studio that does that at home. It's called Soulbeat. And I was like, perfect. So I went, I started going to Soulbeat religiously in March of 2016. So about 4 months later. And that is when I got hooked on spinning. And I got hooked on it, you guys. I was obsessed. I would go as much as I could. I made friends at the studio. Hallie got a job at that studio, so I would hang out with her while we were there. And her and I just had the time of our lives. Like, we were the only 2 high school girls there, and it was just so much fun. I loved it so much. And it was really the first time since like softball where I was being really active, and I lost the weight without ever even trying to. It just happened. I also was vegan for whatever reason. Like, it was honestly like the thing to do was to be vegan in 2016. So I was vegan in 2016. And I lost the weight, and I just got so addicted to spin. It was so much fun. I loved it so, so much. And then I graduated in June of 2016, and I moved down to Alabama in August of 2016. When I was in Alabama, I was there for a full semester, and I liked it for a month, and then I hated it. I was like, this is not for me. School is not for me. Mind you, I'm still doing YouTube, but I'm doing it now in the way that I enjoy, which was on the side when I have something else to do. So I was like, school is just really not for me. It's not what I want to do, but I don't know what else to do at this point. Now we're going to rewind again just a little bit. Before I graduated high school, when I went to the studio Soulbeat, I remember the owner coming up to me, and I had eyelash extensions at the time. And she came up to me and she said, where do you get your eyelashes done? I love them. And I told her where I got them done. And she goes, could you email me your lash girl? My name is Shoshana. I own the studio. This is my email. Can you send it to me? And when she told me that she owned the studio, I was like, I'm obsessed with you. Like, you're God to me. And I was so like proud of her because, mind you, I'm like 17 or 18 at this point. But the studio was jumping. It was packed in there. It was like popping off. It was a Wednesday night, full classes, like booming business. I was like, this is awesome. And it's all yours. Like, this is really, really, really cool. And it was in that moment that I was like, I know one day I want to own a studio, but I want it to be like maybe when I'm 24, 25, 26, like older. You know what I mean? Older. So that was always, that then came in my mind of, you don't just work for, you own. So that was, we're going way back to the beginning now. That was in my mind. Going back to college now. When I was in college, I remember I would write letters to my grandpa, and we would write letters back and forth to each other. And in the letters, I was kind of explaining to him that I didn't love college. I wasn't really seeing the point of college, honestly, for me, because I still didn't see myself working a corporate job after college. And at this point, I love spin. I'm doing YouTube. I'm making good money on YouTube. I'm enjoying it again because it's a hobby. But I want to own a spin studio eventually. Like that's really what I want to do. And I remember Thanksgiving break of that year, so November of 2016, I just like broke down to my mom. I was like, I do not want to go back to college. And she said, okay, you don't have to. And I said, okay, but I don't want to move back home. Like I want to come back home, but I can't live in the same house that like I grew up in, because I need to progress in my life. I don't want to feel like I'm just going back to like high school days. And she's like, I totally get that. I saved up enough money from YouTube to be able to purchase a condo at 18. So I moved home after school and I purchased a condo and I moved into the condo. And my plan was to do YouTube full time to support the dream of one day owning a spin studio. And in the meantime, I would also audition at Soulbeat to become a spin instructor. That was my dream. That was my goal. That was my plan. So this is kind of how all three connected to one another. I began influencing at a really young age. I learned very quickly that I did not like it when it was full time, and I felt really unfulfilled and I needed something else. So then YouTube then became a means of income to funnel a passion project and something that I eventually wanted to do down the line, which was own a spin studio. But I would never have known that I wanted to own a spin studio had I not gone out to LA, maybe put on a couple pounds to come home and find spin classes and become addicted to it. So it's really wild how it all is connected, even though it seems really not connected, but it is. That's how it happened for me. So I moved home. I settled in my condo December of 2016. And I moved in, and March of 2017, I taught my first spin class. So I auditioned in January of 2017, and then I got on the schedule March of 2017 at Soulbeat, at that studio that I first went to and fell in love with. And it was really, really cool for me. I was by far the youngest spin instructor at that studio, and I'm really grateful for the owner to give me that opportunity. It was really cool of her. It was really special, and it wasn't something that I took for granted. And I think I look back on it now of the time that it was and how fast everything progressed. And it's I mean, hindsight's always 2020, but it was just really, really wild. But anyway, to continue on with the story. So I started teaching spin classes in 2017 and March of 2017, and I loved it. I started teaching Friday 9:30s, and then I eventually got the 5:45 a.m. time slots, and that was really my bread and butter. That's when I started to build a following, was in the really early mornings, and I loved it. I did not expect to like early mornings. I remember when my boss first asked me to do early mornings, I said no. I was like, I don't think I'll wake up. And then she texted me like 3 days later. She goes, so you actually don't have a choice. Like, I need someone to teach these classes, and everyone else has kids and a job. Like, I need you to teach them. And I was like, okay, valid. And I taught them, and I ended up loving them. I really developed a following in those classes. I got to know my voice in those classes. I got to learn how to command a room in those classes. Like, I learned so much about myself from becoming a spin instructor. And I noticed that I really began to kind of, I felt really good at it. I felt confident in teaching, and I liked that feeling a lot. I just felt really good at it. And that feels great, to feel good at something. So I then asked the studio owner, I said, can we please do a Monday 5 p.m. time slot? And she was like, no, I really don't think that time slot is going to work. I don't think we can do it. And I would beg and beg and beg. And I was like, please, like, just give me the chance. And she finally said, okay. And she was like, I'll give it to you and we can try it out. And I said, okay. The first Monday 5 p.m. time slot that I got, I had 3 people in it. And I was like, oh my God, I got to build this up. The second one had maybe 4. The third one had maybe 3. You know, it was a very slow build. And then I started doing theme rides. Like I did a Justin Bieber theme ride, or I would make vlogs going to like the studio. And I did like whatever I could to really build up that time slot. And it worked. And about 3 months into having that time slot, the number, I think a full class at that time was 24. And I just remember seeing the numbers go from like, 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 to 24 until it was at 24 every week. And I remember thinking to myself, like, the market is hot. And at this time I was 19. And I was like, the market's kind of hot. I should like maybe do this now. It was sort of just a thought that I had to myself, but I was like, maybe now is the time to open a studio. Like it's something that I've always wanted to do, but I just sort of kept that thought to myself. I was talking to one of my clients and friends that went to that studio, and she said to me, if you and Jess was another instructor at that studio, she said, if you and Jess opened up a studio together, it would be insane. And I was like, I totally agree. So that was after a 5:45 a.m. class. I was driving home and I texted Jess, who was my coworker at the time. And I said, hear me out. First of all, good morning. It's 7 a.m., but hear me out. What if you and I opened a spin studio together? And she was like, I'm totally in. And that's when Stride became a thing. Now, I didn't realize I would be yapping for a full hour when I started this podcast. So I'm going to stop this here, make this part 1. Next week will be part 2. So this is everything that leads up to Stride. Next week will be my part 2 of how Stride came to be and where I am now. But you guys have gotten all the backstory so far. So yeah, that's part 1 of my entrepreneurial journey. And I'll probably do a part 3 too of like what I've learned throughout the years. That would be really cool and really exciting. But I'm going to stop that here because we're already at an hour and we got to stop. But it's getting late. I'm tired. And if you guys are watching on video, you can see I keep squinting because it's like 10 p.m. and these lights are so bright and it's a lot for me. So we're going to stop it here. Part 2 will be next week, but this is part 1 of my entrepreneurial journey. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you all enjoyed my journey so far. And I'm excited to say part 2 next week. So thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to rate the show 5 stars and share it on your story. Send it to a friend. It helps the show so much. Leave a 5-star review. It helps so much. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at @ToriSterling_. And I'll see you guys all next Monday. Bye, guys.